Welcome back to the Two Pointers Podcast. I'm Trevor Everett. I'm joined by Grayson Hill today. In just a second, we're going to talk about the obvious, as you see in the title, not at all, and what I'm anticipating to do today. As you can clearly tell by on YouTube, the logo for the whiteboard art element here for the thing that hasn't even come out yet. You're going to see that in a week. So that's a draft chat little hint there. But thank you for coming on, first of all, and second of all, how are you?
I'm doing great. I like the light behind you. We're all on red alert
Yeah.
because Kyrie Irving has been traded.
Yeah, this is not. I don't want to delay anything because at the end of the day, I'm not floored because we knew this was coming, but I'm floored that it happened at 3 o'clock on a Sunday. So to kick off the trade deadline being over in less than 5 days now, the first official thing that is going to get things domino effect, I guess would be the word I'm looking for. We'll talk about that in a second. Not just for the Nets and the Mavs, but Kyrie Irving and Markieff Morris are being sent to Dallas for Spencer Dinwiddie, Dorian Finney-Smith, a 2029 first-round pick, 27 and 29 second-round picks. Obviously, out the gate, I hate to be the guy that goes, well, who won, who lost? But you know what? This is Talking Heads show for 30 minutes because at the end of the day, that's what people want to hear. So who won the trade? Who lost the trade?
I mean, I'm a big best player gets the won the deal designation, so I'm gonna have to say Dallas by default. Although it may end up being addition by subtraction for Brooklyn in the end, like a couple of Kyrie's previous stops. But yeah, I have to go Dallas on this one.
I do too, as much as I've been very publicly against Kyrie Irving and his antics. I just, anytime a top 25 player in the NBA gets traded to a team who already has a guy who at one point had a 38% usage rate this year, I perplexingly said that nobody wins this at first when I thought about it, but I was like, that's not right. So I'm going to be the constructive podcaster that I can be. And I will say Dallas won this trade. I think Mark Cuban's up to something. I don't think this is their final move. Obviously, that's the offseason. We'll talk about that in a second. But the Nets obviously have a lot of implications. So the first thing I would like to ask for either of us is, does this swing the title odds in either favor? Not odds necessarily betting-wise, but just in your personal opinion, do the Mavs have a better chance of winning the title, and do the Nets have a better chance of winning the title?
I think, comparing floors and ceilings, the ceiling for the Nets is absolutely lower. You can say what you want about Kyrie off the court, the burning sage, the tweets that make you want to throw your phone against the wall, all that stuff. He's an excellent basketball player when he's healthy on the court and fully focused. And we've seen that, like you mentioned, top 25 player, I think, safely in the league. So from that aspect, the Nets ceiling now does not include a championship shot. Even in the East, that's as very top heavy as it is right now. It's still tough to crack that top 3 or 4 teams, which is where they sit now. I don't anticipate that continues for long. I would look for teams like the Cavs to pass them relatively quickly. I'm not sure if they meet up head-to-head anytime soon with the All-Star break coming up. But, yeah, the Nets title shot, if they even had one, is now over. And I think that for Dallas, I also don't think they have a title shot, but I think their ceiling is by default higher. They've vastly improved the front court, paired Luka with a true star. They tried Porzingis, didn't work. As a result, the Porzingis deal, they have no draft picks this year. And that clock is always ticking when you have a star like Luka at such a young age still. So floor-wise, I think the Mavs raised theirs and the Nets lowered theirs. So, I mean, I don't think either team improved their title odds drastically, but I think it's pretty easy to look at this and say that the Mavs odds increased and the Nets odds decreased.
Yeah, this is not a podcast where I'm going to force an argument because at the end of the day, the Dallas got the best player possible in the scenario that they were going to get at the deadline. I just don't see any other move that anybody in the next 5 days is going to make any more sense for them. So this makes total sense. Obviously, some injury influx in the West over the next couple of weeks too with the All-Star break. They're going to probably – I'm not voting for them to be the team that makes the run after the All-Star break. I always say that every year, and it always happens. There's no – I mean, just the facts back it up. A team every year always goes on a 25-type run. I think I said that to you last time when we talked too. So the one thing I like to think about too is obviously not being a plugged-in insider. You have to trust the ones that are. And you mentioned floor ceiling. Regardless for the Nets, this is from Woj directly. The Nets and Mavericks talks accelerated on trade today. The Lakers and the Nets had several conversations on a potential deal, but the Nets preferred the Mavs package, which is getting back a point guard and a wing to plug in now, plus the future picks. What he is essentially alluding to is the fact that they may not be done, right? So for now, the floor is low on their title, but they can obviously go out and make another move, make Katie happy, which is what seems to be the implication from the league. Do I fully believe that? I just don't know what they get. I think that's my issue. The fact that the Mavs kept Christian Wood, what are they ultimately getting for? Sure, future picks from a team that might be horrible in 15 years. That's really what these picks are for now. But I just don't know what they're going to move yet. I'll play around with the trade machine later, but this is just a reaction. We want this to be out there as quick as possible. So I think there is a deal coming for the Nets again, but I think it's really tight to Thursday. I think it's 1, 2, 3 o'clock on Thursday by the time values have essentially plummeted. So obviously there's other things too that are implicated here for the Mavs side of things. Their GM, Nico Harrison, has a long history with Irving going back to their Nike days. Jason Kidd wanted this trade happening, which I think is really, really big. Wanted this trade to happen, excuse me. I think that's really huge detail to throw in there. They needed a second star, obviously, and then now they can go and do a new deal in the offseason if they'd like. I'm going to ask you something. The only wrinkle that I'm kind of just now coming to a conclusion on, Mark Cuban's Jewish.
Yeah, that's actually not something I considered, but yeah, that's
just. I mean, we can leave it there. I
Right.
want that to be said. In a reaction pod to in a case where a guy who very famously, and I'm just going to be very unpolitical for a moment, a guy that quite frankly made idiotic comments in the last 3 to 6 months. Like it's just kind of funny that is the team, and it shows you sometimes that basketball is just a business. And I think this is just a clear-cut example of that. I am not trying to be aggravated in any way. I just want that to be completely clear for the people that are going to react to this, click on it, watch it, listen to it, whatever, and go, interesting. Just that is a detail that is important to know.
Right. I think that's going to be ironed out behind closed doors, especially when they sit down and start talking extension for Kyrie Irving.
Exactly what I brought it
up.
up.
Free agent this offseason. So I don't think that this happens on either side, player organization, without plans for an extension. One of the big sticking points with Kyrie as a Laker was that Kyrie preferred a 4-year max deal, and the Lakers, knowing full well where LeBron is in his career, were more comfortable with a 2-year deal. So that was a big thing that maybe put some traction in the wrong way with the Lakers deal, even though the Lakers are as strapped for assets as anyone. Those two unprotected first and 27 and 29 get thrown into every trade machine deal. But at the end of the day, if they're going to bring in Kyrie, they couldn't really commit to him past the 2 years. That's about all you can ask for from LeBron, should he even stay there 2 years. So, not paying Kyrie $60 million with no chance to win a title was certainly on the minds of Rob Pelinka, and I think for good reason. So that was another thing people may not consider when they ask themselves why Kyrie's not headed further west than he already is.
So I mentioned it to myself, but slightly in my little mini rant there. But is this Brooklyn's only deal? And do you see what is their ideal target? I guess don't give me an idea of a trade if you don't have one. But what's their ideal target now?
I think they get honestly what they can. I don't think it's a talent problem now necessarily. I think it's more of very, very carefully restructuring and retooling just because of the void left by Kyrie Irving. Obviously, the players they got back are fine NBA level players, but they're not in sum anywhere close to Kyrie Irving, honestly. And I realize that, the pressure in New York is a big thing in the market and all that, and Dallas is kind of laid back. I mean, you'll talk about stars and front offices under pressure. Dallas didn't really get much of that, which just makes this deal kind of that much more surprising. I mean, the clock, like I mentioned, is ticking on Luka as soon as you realize what kind of special talent he is, but there wasn't a clamoring daily for some magical trade to fix everything like we see with the Lakers and other teams like that. So I think the pressure was probably on internally in Dallas. So I think that's going to extend to Brooklyn, because when you have Kevin Durant, there's no excuse not to win. And if Kevin Durant doesn't feel like he can win a title, he will leave you in the summer. I've been there. Trust me, he will leave.
Nice.
So
four years, 194 left. So he's got it's obviously going to be a very Spider-Man meme position we were in last year, or I was trying to think of whatever word I'm
right. And he's already tried it once. So I think in that respect, Brooklyn's got to do something else. You can't just offload Kyrie Irving per his request, because if Durant sees that works, then that will be his route out of Brooklyn via trade. It's probably equally impossible as it was when he first requested it, but that doesn't mean he won't try. So I think that, the big swing, I guess, would have been Miles Turner, maybe, but now he's extended. So I don't know.
They clearly have no plans of moving him.
Right. So, I got a deadline big board pulled up from The Athletic. I'm looking at just bigs to try and help out. John Collins, that doesn't really move the needle. Bojan Bogdanovic, Kyle Kuzma, Poeltl. I mean, there's just not a lot here. Vucevic, I mean, that just doesn't seem smart, even in short term, in a win now mode to try and keep Durant happy and contending. I just don't know with this kind of class of deadline availability if you can really reform this team back to the same contender they were 2 hours ago. But they're going to have to do something. Otherwise, like I said, Durant will be the next one out the door, or at least requesting it.
So I'll throw this one out there as just this was something I was going to bring up that I thought about as soon as we hit record, was trying to figure out what's their out, right? If Kevin Durant is still ultimately happy, but they do want to start playing around with it, and that'll be how we segue into the last part of it, is obviously cap or tax implications in the future. I have to give a shout out to Bill Simmons for this one and their NBA trade value draft they did. I guess I'll call it that. Ben Simmons being on a 5-year, 177 deal, and he's basically become a backup center. It's just ultimately not what's going to work for Kevin Durant and the Brooklyn Nets as currently constructed. And I think there's a very clear out, and I think it's San Antonio. And I don't understand why either side doesn't do this deal at this point, because if I'm the Nets, I want out of this 5-year, $177 million contract. If I'm the Spurs, I want to suck for even longer and not, basically take on a distressed asset, which at this point, whether he's improved or not, I don't care. His average salary is $35.5 million, and he's not providing that type of value. So a team like the Spurs can take any amount of contract they want back like that, and they have guys. Think about this contract implication for them. Seth Curry's $432, which isn't bad. Royce O'Neal's 4 for $36, which isn't bad. Even Spencer Dinwiddie, 3 years, $54, isn't even that bad. But then you have Joe Harris, 4 for $75. The Ben, obviously, contract being 5-year, $177. So you've got some flexibility and wiggle room, which is why I said don't give me a deal if you don't have one. But I think this Ben Simmons piece may not happen this year, but I am definitely open to it happening in the offseason if I'm the Nets and trying to figure out what their next year or two looks like with Kevin Durant, knowing you only have 4 guaranteed. So implication-wise, obviously any comments on Ben Simmons being possibly thrown into the Spurs accidentally to you there, but and also, we can talk about tax implications as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think whatever the Nets' plan is, it's not to pay Ben Simmons north of $77 million over the next 2 seasons, being 23 and 24.
Yeah,
they're paying him 35 this year. That's fine. It's worth a shot. You brought him in. Clearly, it's not working, and we just saw who may be waiting in the wings in Cam Thomas just last night with 44 in a win on like 19 shots, coming back from 20 down to stun the Wizards. Another very weird loss for DC. And a guy mentioned Kuzma, who may also be on the move for the Wizards. But I mean, yeah, as far as the Nets go, I think you're right. This really can't be the only move. We may not see any clear writing on the wall, but obviously the big cap numbers are the first ones you look at. Durant going nowhere if they can help it, and then Ben Simmons is the only other one making over $20 million a year, and Joe Harris is dangerously close. But I think that's not an asset you get a lot back for at this point. Seth Curry, you mentioned, he's expiring this year, actually. So that may be a bit more enticing to teams like San Antonio looking to take on money, and then he's off their books in the summer and he can rejoin a contender. So that may be a piece. But at that point, any salary you add to Ben Simmons in a deal, it's going to be incredibly hard to match just because of what he's owed and what he's being paid currently. So that will be the only thing with the Spurs is could they actually scrounge up the money to match it and get that deal through.
I love how, and we'll talk about, and you hit most of the cap stuff there, but the Dallas pick thing we wrote down in our doc here. I'm honestly happy for Dallas in a little bit of a sense, because we mentioned the tanking value of this asset being Kyrie Irving, and the fact that Dallas, obviously we knew they don't own their 2023 first, but they own their 2024 first, their 25 first and second. They own their 2026 first and 2027 first and second. So they basically gave up nothing, because we all know how that works, and they just gave themselves full range of flexibility over the next 4 years to move any pick for any player, because they are ultimately, if Mark Cuban owns that franchise, they're always in some position to make a Kyrie Irving type deal. So I don't know whether we pointed this out or not yet. I just wanted to make sure that was completely clear, whether the cap implications matter or not and how they want to work out a deal. If anybody can get this done, and I trust Mark Cuban more than most people, I just have always believed in how he can build. And we've seen that over the years, obviously, what he did in 2011. Different NBA back then. But the point is I'm almost, the more I talk about it and the more I look at these notes, the more I'm like, they kind of just stole Kyrie Irving at this point. I'm a little like, Spencer Dinwiddie they got as part of that Washington deal a few years, to get rid of Porzingis, so they got a good asset there. They ultimately kept the value up for Dorian Finney-Smith, even though I've never been a Dorian Finney-Smith fan, so I don't necessarily know what his real value is. Now, if he succeeds in Brooklyn, this is not a place, like, I'd love to see him as a fourth option somewhere, or maybe he's just a really nice role player that Dallas had to overplay. I don't know. Long story short, I'm really, really happy where Dallas is, whether the cap implication is even relevant at this point, because they're going to work out a deal, and at this point, who but Mark Cuban to overpay for anything and keep the tax up, or keep the tax paid. So I don't know if there was a point there that I was trying to make, but I just wanted to throw that out there as like in the next, I don't even know when I started the timer, but in the next few minutes, making sure that was out there.
Yeah, you mentioned the draft picks, the maneuverability there. It's really good because this is not a team that's really built a whole lot through the draft since that fateful night they traded Trae Young for Luka. I mean, that draft in 2018, they had Trae, who became Luka, of course, Jalen Brunson and Shake Milton. All three of those are very good players for what they're asked to do. Shake Milton, obviously, in Philly now, and Brunson is a Knick. But, I mean, since then, it has been, if there are any Josh Green or Tyrell Terry truthers, I apologize. But, I mean, that's not what Luka needs next to him, at least not on the floor. So, them having their first-round picks for the next couple of years, they did give up the 29 first in this deal, and they will be without their 23 first this upcoming draft because of that Porzingis deal you mentioned. But after that, I agree, it's very, very good sign for them going forward that if they keep the same approach as far as not depending on the draft, like some other organizations like my Thunder do, that they can still move picks and get deals done to bring in established players that are ready to win now with Luka. And, I think it's fair to assume an extension at this point, just the manner in which this deal was done with Kyrie Irving, that we'll see Kyrie in Dallas for more than several months. If they give him a 4-year max, that's essentially going all in on trying to bring Luka a championship in that window. I don't know if that's necessarily the smartest thing to do, but that's what Kyrie is going to ask for when they first sit down at the negotiation table. So, who wins that tug of war? No one knows really. But I think Cuban, like you mentioned, will dig into his pockets as deep as necessary to bring a winner back to Dallas, especially with Luka and Kyrie locked in for as close to half a decade as they can get financially comfortably, obviously. And then, those 4 firsts the next 4 years, obviously this upcoming draft, they don't have it. But, where this team could go with Kyrie to end the regular season, that first-round pick may not be much compared to some other assets in the draft. So not the worst thing in the world to not have one this year. They are open for business as far as disgruntled stars, things like that, on the open market trade-wise with these picks that they do have.
Yeah, mentioning Mark Cuban reached to his pockets, or just in general trying to do any tactic to keep guys in, like, throw it back to whatever year that was. They tried to lock DeAndre Jordan into a house, which, by the way, that worked out better for everyone involved. So, which is kind of hilarious looking back on it that they didn't have him for long, if I remember correctly. I like waiting just a little bit on emergency pods. Granted, this is only the second one, so obviously, and hilarious enough, it was James Harden. People can take that how they want, but I'm just gonna say this because it popped up, and B, it is a side of this angle that I did not think about. We just sat here and we laid out the case, and this is why I love multiple listening to opinions, etc., which is why I'm glad I didn't talk to myself for 30 minutes. Thank you. But this is not an angle I thought about, and I'm really glad I just saw this. So we were talking about how this is, what is Brooklyn's next deal to try to bring in pieces around Kevin Durant. Chris Haynes has already just snuck something in just now. I'm just going to throw this out here. Suns prepared to pursue KD. Phoenix will try to acquire Kevin Durant, quote, should he become available. Now, I don't know what Josiah is thinking, but after this offseason and after the fact that, by the way, before I even finish that statement, the Brooklyn Nets are 4th in the Eastern Conference. This would be the wildest blow-up in NBA history, but I'm just going to say this. It is completely not out of the realm of possibility because Phoenix is in a position to be aggressive is the word I'm going to use, but also desperate in a sense because their title window with Chris Paul and with Devin Booker's injury history right now is kind of almost being sucked close, and essentially it probably already ended. So, you know what? I'm very glad I saw that because, first of all, Chris Haynes, like him or love him, right more than wrong. I'm gonna say, and the fact that, and granted, he is pretty tight in with Chris Paul and the Suns, so I can't really be too bullish on this. But that is an angle that I was not prepared to think about an hour and a half ago, and actually an hour ago. They literally just happened 35 minutes ago. But I don't even know what to ask you. Like, what do we make of this?
If the Phoenix Suns somehow acquire Kevin Durant and get healthy Devin Booker back,
the West is wide open.
Look out, because that Phoenix team, talking about second half runs, they bring those two players back in the fold. That is going to be, you're going to see some movement on some title odds very, very quickly. And I think that wherever Durant goes, he's going to have that effect, and it's deserved just because of how good of a player he is. So, I mean, in a year where the West is wide open, really a medium swing, maybe enough to put you over the top, you'll get Kevin Durant. You're going to get a whole lot of buzz about you coming out of the Western Conference. I don't see any other team around them in the standings in the West really reaching out to do that. I think Phoenix and Miami, if I remember correctly from the summer, were the two teams the most closely rumored to be in on the sweepstakes or lack thereof, just because of financial stuff and whatever else. But if the Phoenix Suns can pull that off, or honestly, any current playoff team that brings in Kevin Durant, I think you're going to see a lot of optimism very, very quickly. And it will be deservedly so, because I think that team immediately becomes, I'll hesitate on title favorite just depending on where he goes. But I mean, he's not going to like a 6 or a 7 seed. I mean, I guess Miami's 6, so maybe they will. But if Phoenix, who is 2 games out of the 3 seed as we sit here, gets a healthy Devin Booker back post All-Star break, and then can bring in Kevin Durant pre-deadline, Denver's going to be looking behind them for the last 30 games of the season.
So the change of Sarver to Ishbia is not expected to happen before the trade deadline, so Sarver still has to technically sign off on deals. That's according to Brian Windhorst. That is a really big detail in this. However, new owner syndrome, I've always been very clear, is a very big thing, right? Minnesota with Rudy Gobert, when the Pelicans or whoever, that Chris Paul ordeal with the Lakers, like one of those teams, or the Lakers obviously didn't switch owners, but the other team did. There's a couple other famous examples, but regardless, I've always said it was a real thing. The Nuggets owners, I think it was 15 years ago now, and when they traded Billups for Billups. But regardless, it can happen. I'm being very clear about that. And Jay Crowder's obviously already meant, that's going to be a movable piece. They're not moving bridges. I don't care unless it gets Kevin Durant on a 4-year deal. Then sure,
right?
Probably,
that would be the exception. Yeah.
That'd be the exception, but I think they can find a way to make it work with Cam Johnson and a conglomerate of some picks and things like that. I'm just making it clear that unless now, this is just me talking out of my you-know-what. If a Brian Windhorst report comes out tomorrow morning that Ishbia has officially taken over because of contracts and the way things were signed, it was supposed to be done before the deadline, but then he came out again mid-January and said it wasn't. So if we find out before Thursday, recording this on Sunday, before the trade deadline, if we find out that he takes over the team before Thursday, Kevin Durant's going to be a Phoenix Sun. I'm just going to put it out there. This can be clipped. This can be aggregated. I don't care. That will happen. There's too many dominoes that would have fallen, and Windhorst's reputation with these kind of conversations and these kind of things that he brings up, it has to happen at that point. So I am not ready for that emergency podcast. I need to recover from this one first. But I am fully prepared for if any Ishbia news comes up in the next 24 to 48 hours, Kevin Durant's probably being moved.
That's going to grease the wheels, and not to be a conspiracy theorist, although the NBA is a great place to be one.
Yeah.
We all know who the late game on TNT Tuesday night is. It's my Thunder against LeBron James, who is 36 points short of passing Kareem to be all-time scoring leader. I hope he does it, but even
cleared
if he
my calendar for that, by the way.
Guess who the early game is, Mr. Everett?
I haven't looked at Tuesday's. I haven't even done yesterday.
Phoenix
yet,
Suns in Brooklyn.
Is it really?
Can you imagine?
Oh crap! Okay, so
what a day for TNT that would be.
There's no conspiracy theory though, because it's more of a what are the odds moment, but it's also setting up to be this perfectly painted picture on Monday. If the physicals pass by 4:00 in the afternoon, most people don't know the physical has to pass by end of business day on the day before if they can play. So my God, if it happens before 5:00.
If we've got guys walking across tunnels on Tuesday, and then we watch LeBron break the scoring record, There's going to be some viewership records
I'm having flashbacks to
obliterated.
2016. You remember what happened in the last game of the season? The Warriors broke the regular
Yes.
season record, and then
Yeah.
2 hours later, Kobe says, "How about 60 on my final night?" Rest in
Right,
peace, Kobe.
yeah.
But I don't even want to think about it. Okay, I'm barely going to be able to make it through Monday right now. So, jeez. Okay. On that note, anything else before I ask you this final question that I think is hilarious that came up while we were talking? Anything else about this trade, about Kyrie Irving, about Kevin Durant possibly being a Phoenix? I can't even talk. A Phoenix Sun. Anything else that is implicative to the championship or anything like that?
I'll say first off, this is what we get for saying the deadline may be a dud because of the star power involved.
100%. I will eat my
Check
words on
that one off.
I will eat my words
I did
on
the same
this.
thing. I think we're all we were fair to say that, and now obviously, hindsight being what it is, it's not even deadline week officially yet, and that is checked off of our list. But yeah, I'm just looking forward to watching Shai Gilgeous-Alexander maybe start the All-Star game. Unfortunately, due to an injury to Steph Curry, but him and John Morant will be up for replacing him in the All-Star festivities as we enter the break. But before that, we'll obviously get a ton of drama with the trade deadline, and it's going to be a great week and a half to be an NBA fan.
Yeah, you know how I feel about this, but he should have been in the starting for the first place.
Oh, I know.
Anyway,
I know.
so I thought of this, and I think this is hysterical, and I'm going to ask it anyway for either fan base can get a laugh. Which fan base we've had an hour to process it, so by the time they hear this, it'd be a couple hours, but which fan base is going to wake up tomorrow morning happier that they acquired Kyrie Irving? The team that got rid of him or the team that acquired him?
I think both will be true, but I feel like the Dallas fans have been waiting on this.
Yeah.
We said the Porzingis experiment was funny for everyone, but Dallas fans, I think that they've swung before and missed, and Kyrie has been a swing and a miss for several teams. Sorry, Celtics, but I think that with a guy like Luka, it's refreshing to see an owner that talks the talk and Cuban walking the walk and making another swing at it and trying to get this Dallas team over the hump. So I'll give him credit regardless of how this shakes out. But it's a fun time to be a Dallas fan. I feel like they've been kind of flying under the radar this year. We mentioned looking at the standings, they're the 6th seed, but they're 2.5 games out of the 3 seed. That's just the state of the West these days. So lots of room to move up, and I think that it could happen pretty quickly if Kyrie and Luka are clicking. So, yeah, I had to go to Dallas on that one.
All right. I am going to mention this again. I did at the top. If not, it will be edited in post-production. But if you are a Dallas Mavericks fan or a Brooklyn Nets fan, you would like to go watch either of these teams play in the next, especially on Tuesday if they're going to have Kevin Durant on a different team. As of this morning, you can use code 2pointers at SeatGeek.com for $20 off your first purchase. That is not news to him. I've already told him. But I don't think I mentioned it at the top, so if you're hearing this at the end, you'll hear it at the beginning as well. $20 off, code 2pointers, link at the top of the description. You can go watch Kyrie Irving be a Brooklyn Net. This is why I'm so glad that I did not do this alone. You can watch him be a Dallas Maverick on as early as I guess they play tomorrow. I don't know if he'd be on the flight by tonight, but probably. All right, this has been a lot of fun. I think I started the clock late, so I think this has been 30 minutes. But plug away. Everything will be in the description below, as always, anytime you're on.
Yeah, when I'm not on here chopping up with Trevor, I'm over at the 1009 with a couple of college buddies talking a whole lot of sports, a whole bunch of different things. Mostly football guys. We're starting to transition. We're just kind of how to learn how to do that as we watch the Super Bowl, react to it, and then enter the unfortunate period without football for a couple months. So baseball ramping up, college basketball really ramping up. Really excited to kind of transition away from football and get towards these other sports we've kind of been looking past as football has come to a conclusion. So yeah, like I said, at the 1009 on Twitter, the 1009 podcast on YouTube, and we're on Apple and Spotify as well. So as always, Trevor, appreciate it. First emergency pod of we'll call it a career very generously, but had a lot of fun.
I hope to not be doing any more of these this week, but if Kevin Durant gets traded, we'll see you in a little bit. This has been the 2 Pointers Podcast. I'm Trevor Everett on behalf of Grayson. We'll see you later.